The silence of deep space was broken only by the steady hum of machines aboard Research Station Omicron 7. Chief Researcher Tamin stood before the main viewing screen, his four arms crossed behind his back as he watched the distant stars. His insect-like eyes reflected the cold light of the universe beyond. "Sir, we have found something unusual," called Jiho from his workstation. The young researcher's antennae twitched with excitement as he manipulated the holographic display with his delicate claws. Tamin turned his triangular head toward his junior colleague. "What kind of unusual, Jiho?" "A probe, sir. It appears to be from an unknown species. Our scanners picked it up drifting near the seventh planet of this system." Jiho's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of his growing enthusiasm. "Show me," Tamin commanded, his scientific mind immediately focused. The main screen flickered and displayed the image of a small metallic object tumbling slowly through the void. It was clearly artificial, with smooth surfaces and what appeared to be some kind of propulsion system at one end. Strange markings covered its hull. "Have you analyzed the material composition?" Tamin asked as he approached the display. "Yes, sir. The metals are common throughout the galaxy, but the construction techniques are completely foreign. And, sir, there is something else." Jiho paused, his voice carrying a note of wonder. "The probe is still transmitting data, weak signals, but we have been able to capture and decode some of it." Nari, the station's cultural analyst, looked up from her own workstation. Her compound eyes glittered with curiosity. "What kind of data, Jiho?" "That is the fascinating part," Jiho replied, manipulating the holographic controls. "It appears to be cultural information, images, sounds, and what we believe to be entertainment files from the species that built this probe." Dongwu, the military advisor assigned to their research station, stepped closer to the group. His larger frame cast a shadow over the others. "Entertainment files? That seems like an odd thing to include in a space probe." "Not necessarily," Nari interjected, her scholarly training evident in her tone. "Many species include cultural artifacts in their exploration vessels. It helps other civilizations understand who they are and what they value." Tamin nodded slowly. "Have we been able to identify the species?" "Based on the probe's design and the biological data we have found in the files, they call themselves humans," Jiho explained. "They appear to be bipedal mammals from a planet they call Earth. The probe contains thousands of hours of what they term movies and television shows." "Fascinating," Tamin murmured. "A complete cultural archive. This could provide invaluable insight into a previously unknown intelligent species." Dongwu's mandibles clicked in a pattern that indicated concern. "Should we not be cautious? We know nothing about these humans or their intentions, which is exactly why we must study this material," Nari said, her excitement matching Jiho's. "Think about it. We have the opportunity to understand an entire species before making first contact. We can learn their customs, their values, their way of thinking." Tamin considered this for a moment. The discovery was unprecedented. In all his years of research, he had never encountered such a complete cultural database from an unknown species. "Very well. We will begin a systematic analysis of the human cultural files. Jiho, how are the files organized?" The humans appear to have categorized their entertainment into different types, Jiho replied, bringing up a new display. "There are labels such as drama, comedy, action, science fiction, and something called horror." "Horror?" Dongwu asked, his tone skeptical. "Yes, sir. Based on our translation algorithms, the word appears to relate to fear or terror. We are still working to understand the context." Nari leaned forward with interest. "Perhaps these horror files are historical records of frightening events in their past. Many species create dramatic recreations of significant moments in their history." "That would make sense," Tamin agreed. What other categories do they have? There are also files labeled as documentaries and historical records, Jiho continued. These might be our best starting point for understanding human society. Agreed, Taman said. However, we should approach this systematically. Begin with whatever files appear to be the most factual. We need to understand their basic biology, their social structure, and their technological capabilities before we can interpret their cultural expressions. Dongwu shifted his weight, still appearing uncomfortable. What if these files contain sensitive information about their military capabilities? We could be studying intelligence data from a potentially hostile species. All the more reason to be thorough, Taman replied. Knowledge is our best defense. If these humans prove to be aggressive, we need to understand them completely. Jiho's claws danced over his controls as he began organizing the files. Sir, I am having some difficulty with their categorization system. The humans appear to use the same storage methods for what they call fiction and what they label as based on true events. That is odd, Nari commented. Most species clearly separate factual records from imaginative works. Perhaps their technology automatically archives everything together, Taman suggested. Or maybe the distinction is less important to their culture than it is to ours. I have managed to isolate what appear to be their most popular files, Jiho announced. These seem to have been viewed by millions of humans, so they likely represent important cultural touchstones. Excellent. What are they about? Jiho studied his readings carefully. Many of them appear to be survival scenarios, humans facing various threats and challenges. Some involve what they call zombies. Others feature masked killers, and several document encounters with large predatory creatures. Survival training? Dongwu asked with renewed interest. Possibly, Nari said thoughtfully. Though the production values seem quite high for mere training exercises. These files have elaborate settings, musical accompaniment, and what appear to be professional performers. Perhaps survival training is so important to their culture that they invest significant resources in making it engaging, Taman theorized. There is something else, Jiho added, his antennae twitching with confusion. Many of these survival scenario files are labeled as horror, but the humans watching them in the background data seem to be enjoying them, enjoying survival training. Dongwu's voice carried disbelief. It would make sense if they are a warrior culture, Nari observed. Some species find combat training pleasurable. Taman processed this information carefully. Begin with the most straightforward files first. Look for anything that clearly depicts normal human daily life. We need baseline information before we can understand their specialized activities. Yes, sir, Jiho replied, beginning to sort through the massive database. Though, sir, based on the file names and descriptions, it appears that survival scenarios and conflict situations make up a significant portion of their entertainment archive. That is concerning, Dongwu muttered. Or enlightening, Taman corrected. If survival and conflict are central themes in their culture, that tells us something important about both their environment and their nature. As the research team began their work, none of them realized they were about to make the most significant error in xenobiological analysis in galactic history. The human probe drifted silently in space, its precious cargo of cultural information ready to be completely misunderstood by four well-meaning alien researchers who had no context for the concept of fictional entertainment. The first files began loading onto their systems, starting with what Jiho had identified as the most popular human survival training scenarios. The opening credits of a zombie apocalypse film began to play on their screens, and the four researchers leaned forward with scientific fascination, ready to learn about human society. They had no idea they were about to watch horror movies and mistake them for documentaries. 3 days had passed since the research team began studying the human cultural files. The main laboratory of Research Station Omicron 7 now looked like a war room, with multiple screens displaying paused images from various human movies. Charts and graphs covered every available surface, and the four researchers moved between workstations with growing urgency. Taman stood before the largest display screen, his forearms gesturing at freeze-frame images from what humans called Dawn of the Dead. His compound eyes reflected the flickering light as he spoke to his team. "The evidence is overwhelming," he announced, his voice filled with scientific certainty. "These humans face regular planetary extinction events. Look at this data." The screen showed scenes of zombies overwhelming a shopping mall while a small group of humans fought desperately to survive. Taman pointed with one claw at the undead creatures shambling across the screen. According to this documentary, the human species regularly encounters what they call zombie plagues. Notice how the uninfected humans demonstrate remarkable tactical thinking and resource management under extreme pressure. Jiho looked up from his workstation, his antennae twitching with excitement. "Sir, I have analyzed 17 similar documentaries. The zombie plague appears to be a recurring threat on their planet. But here is the fascinating part. Humans have developed specific survival protocols for this exact scenario." "Show me," Taman commanded. Jiho manipulated his controls, and his screen displayed a compilation of scenes from various zombie films. "Watch their behavior patterns. They instinctively know to aim for the head region of the infected creatures. They understand the importance of securing food supplies and finding defensible positions. They even have knowledge about which weapons work best against different types of undead." Nari approached from her analysis station, carrying a data pad, filled with notes. The cultural implications are staggering. Not only do humans face these plagues regularly, but they have turned the survival strategies into a form of entertainment. They appear to enjoy watching recreation of these deadly scenarios. "That suggests a warrior mentality," Dongwu observed from across the room. "Only a species accustomed to constant warfare would find combat scenarios entertaining." "But it gets more disturbing," Nari continued, scrolling through her notes. "I have been studying what they call slasher films. These document encounters with nearly immortal human predators who hunt other humans for sport." She activated her display, showing scenes from various slasher movies. The team watched in fascination as masked killers pursued terrified victims through dark locations. "Notice the hunting techniques," Nari explained, pointing at the screen. "These predator humans demonstrate supernatural resilience. They can survive massive physical trauma and continue pursuing their prey. Yet the victim humans show remarkable ingenuity in trying to escape or fight back." Jiho's mandibles clicked rapidly as he processed this information. "This indicates that humans have evolved alongside apex predators of their own species. The survival pressure must be incredible." "What is even more remarkable," Nari added, "is that these predator humans often target the younger members of their species. Yet human adolescents consistently demonstrate advanced problem-solving skills and combat awareness when facing these threats." Taman moved to another screen displaying images from creature features. "And then we have the megafauna documentaries. Humans share their planet with massive predatory organisms. The screen showed scenes of giant sharks, enormous spiders, and colossal lizards attacking human settlements. Taman gestured at the images with obvious respect. "Look at the size of these creatures compared to individual humans. Yet humans consistently find ways to defeat them. They use primitive weapons, basic technology, and pure determination to overcome enemies that outweigh them by thousands of kilograms." Dongwu approached the display, his military training evident in his analysis. "Their tactical flexibility is impressive. In this documentary about giant aquatic predators, humans adapt their hunting strategies based on the creature's behavior. They use boats as mobile platforms, employ explosive devices, and coordinate group attacks." "Sir," Jiho called from his workstation, "I have been analyzing what humans call supernatural horror documentaries. These present even more disturbing evidence. The team gathered around Jiho's screen, which showed scenes from various ghost and demon movies. Spirits phased through walls, possessed humans exhibited incredible strength, and otherworldly entities terrorized families. According to these records, Jiho explained, humans regularly encounter hostile interdimensional beings, entities that can manipulate physical reality, possess human bodies, and exist beyond normal biological limitations. Impossible, Dongwu muttered, but his voice carried uncertainty. The evidence is clear, Jiho insisted. Watch this family's response to interdimensional invasion. The screen showed a typical poltergeist movie, with furniture flying through the air and walls bleeding. The human family reacted with fear, but quickly began researching countermeasures. They immediately seek expert knowledge about the supernatural threat. They locate specialists in interdimensional combat. They perform complex rituals to banish the entities. This level of preparedness suggests these encounters are common enough that humans have developed an entire profession dedicated to supernatural warfare. Nari pulled up another data set on her screen. I have been cataloging human emotional responses to these survival scenarios. The most disturbing finding is that many humans actively seek out these experiences. What do you mean? Taemin asked. They have locations called theaters where humans gather in groups to watch these survival documentaries together. They consume special foods and appear to enjoy the experience. Some humans watch these scenarios repeatedly. Recreational trauma exposure, Dongwu said slowly. They are conditioning themselves for survival situations by repeatedly experiencing them in a controlled environment. It gets worse, Nari continued. Human children are exposed to modified versions of these survival scenarios from a very young age. They have simplified versions of zombie encounters, monster attacks, and supernatural threats specifically designed for their developing minds. Taemin absorbed this information, his scientific mind working to process the implications. So humans begin survival training in childhood and continue throughout their adult lives. They face regular existential threats from multiple sources: biological plagues, apex predators of their own species, megafauna, and interdimensional entities. Yet they continue to thrive as a species, Jiho added. Their population appears stable, their technology advances, and they even have time for entertainment and cultural development. Because they have turned survival into entertainment, Nari concluded. They enjoy the challenge. They find pleasure in overcoming impossible odds. Dongwu turned away from the screens, his posture indicating deep concern. We are not dealing with a normal species. These humans have evolved under pressure that would drive most civilizations to extinction. They have not just adapted, they have thrived. The question now, Taemin said thoughtfully, is whether they represent a threat to galactic peace or an opportunity for alliance. A species this formidable could be invaluable as allies, but devastating as enemies. Sir, Jiho interrupted, there is something else. I have been analyzing their technological development documentaries, what they call science fiction. The implications are concerning. The team turned to look at him, and Jiho's antennae drooped slightly under their attention. Based on these historical records, humans have already begun expanding beyond their home planet, and sir, they appear to have brought their survival instincts with them into space. The research station fell silent except for the hum of machines. Outside, the stars continued their ancient dance, unaware that 4 alien scientists were completely rewriting galactic threat assessments based on a fundamental misunderstanding of human entertainment. 1 week into their research, the atmosphere aboard Research Station Omicron 7 had changed completely. The 4 researchers now worked with the intensity of military strategists preparing for war. Emergency lighting had been activated, casting harsh shadows across the laboratory as data streams flowed across dozens of active screens. Taemin stood at the center of it all, his 4 arms manipulating multiple holographic displays simultaneously. Around him, his team had arranged their workstations in a defensive circle, as if the human cultural files might leap from the screens and attack them at any moment. "The pattern is undeniable," Taman announced to his assembled team. "We are not dealing with a normal species. We have discovered the apex predator civilization of this galaxy." He gestured to the main display, which showed a complex chart mapping human survival capabilities. The data painted a picture of a species that defied all known biological limitations. "Consider the evidence we have gathered," Taman continued. "First, humans possess supernatural healing abilities. In these survival documentaries, we observe the same individuals returning after apparent death to continue fighting." The screen showed clips from various horror sequels, with characters like Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers rising again after seemingly fatal encounters. "Immortality," Jiho whispered, his voice filled with awe. "Or at least extremely advanced. Regenerative capabilities." "Second," Taman continued, "humans demonstrate complete fearlessness when confronting cosmic horrors that would drive other species insane. Watch this." The display shifted to scenes from Lovecraftian horror films, showing human characters encountering ancient gods and interdimensional nightmares. Instead of fleeing in terror, the humans investigated, took notes, and developed countermeasures. Any rational species would evacuate their planet immediately upon discovering such entities, Dongwu observed. Instead, humans actively seek them out and attempt to understand them. "Which brings us to our third observation," Taman said. "Human children are deliberately exposed to these survival scenarios from infancy. This suggests that facing cosmic horror is so routine for their species that they must begin training before their minds are fully developed." Nari looked up from her workstation, where she had been analyzing children's horror films and cartoons. "I have been studying their juvenile training materials. Even their youngest members are taught to confront monsters, ghosts, and supernatural threats. They have entire educational programs dedicated to monster identification and combat techniques." "The implications are staggering," Jiho added, pulling up his own analysis. "I have discovered that humans have developed multiple subcategories for their survival training programs. They call them genres." The screen displayed a comprehensive breakdown of horror subgenres, each one interpreted through the lens of alien military analysis. "Psychological horror appears to be advanced mental conditioning," Jiho explained. "Humans train their minds to resist supernatural influence and maintain rational thought under extreme stress." "Body horror serves as biological warfare preparation," Nari contributed. "Humans study the effects of parasitic infections, genetic, mutations, and biological weapons so they can recognize and counter such attacks." "Cosmic horror," Dongwu said grimly, "represents training for encounters with entities beyond normal understanding. Humans prepare themselves mentally for contact with beings that operate outside known physics." "And survival horror," Taman concluded, "teaches resource management and strategic thinking under impossible circumstances." The team worked in silence for several minutes, each adding new data to their growing file on human capabilities. The evidence painted a picture of a species so thoroughly adapted to violence and survival that they had elevated warfare to an art form. "Sir," Jiho called out, his voice trembling with excitement, "I have made another discovery. Humans appear to possess technology that allows them to manipulate time itself." "Explain," Taman commanded. "Many of their survival documentaries exist in multiple versions, showing the same events from different temporal perspectives. Some show events that occurred before the original encounter. Others document what happens years after the initial survival scenario." The screen displayed movie posters for horror prequels and sequels, which the aliens interpreted as evidence of human time travel capabilities. "They can observe the same threat across multiple timelines," Jiho continued. "This allows them to study enemy behavior patterns and develop increasingly effective countermeasures." Dongwu stepped closer to examine the evidence. "This explains their tactical superiority. They do not just adapt to threats, they can study them across time and space to develop perfect strategies." The technology required for such capabilities is beyond our current understanding, Nari observed. We may be dealing with a civilization far more advanced than we initially believed. Taman processed this information, his scientific mind racing to understand the implications. If humans possess temporal manipulation technology, combined with their apparent immortality and fearless nature, they represent a threat unlike anything the galaxy has ever encountered. But, sir, Jiho said hesitantly, there is something that confuses me about human behavior. What is it? Despite their incredible survival capabilities and advanced technology, humans still appear to experience fear during these encounters. Their emotional responses suggest genuine distress, even though they ultimately overcome every threat. Nari looked up from her analysis. I have noticed this as well. Humans show clear signs of terror when facing supernatural entities, yet they continue to fight. This suggests either incredible courage or complete insanity. Perhaps both, Dongwu muttered. A species would need to be partially insane to thrive in the conditions we have observed on their planet. Taman moved to another display showing human action films, which the aliens had classified as military training documentaries. The situation becomes even more complex when we examine their combat capabilities in non-supernatural scenarios. The A screen showed scenes from various action movies with humans performing impossible feats of strength, agility, and tactical thinking. Individual humans routinely defeat entire armies, Taman explained. They survive explosions that should vaporize organic matter. They demonstrate reflexes that exceed our measurement capabilities. Single human warriors taking on entire enemy forces and winning, Dongwu said with grudging respect. Even our most elite soldiers could not achieve such results. And they do it while making jokes, Nari added, replaying dialogue from action movies. Humans maintain their sense of humor even during life-or-death combat situations. This suggests either supreme confidence in their abilities or a complete disconnect from normal survival instincts, Jiho observed. Taman stepped back. From the displays, his forearms folded as he contemplated their findings. We have discovered a species that treats cosmic horror as entertainment, warfare as recreation, and survival against impossible odds as routine daily activity. What kind of planet could produce such beings? Dongwu asked. A death world, Taman replied grimly. The humans call their planet Earth, but based on our analysis, it must be the most dangerous environment in known space. Only constant exposure to existential threats could forge a species with such incredible survival capabilities. Sir, Nari said quietly, we need to make a decision about how to proceed. Do we recommend first contact with these humans? Taman considered the question carefully. The evidence was overwhelming. Humanity represented either the greatest potential ally or the most dangerous enemy their civilization had ever encountered. We continue our research, he decided. We need more data before we can make any recommendations to the Galactic Council. But one thing is certain. We cannot ignore a species this formidable. The research station continued its silent orbit as the four aliens worked deep into the night cycle, completely unaware that they were basing their assessment of human civilization on fictional entertainment. In their minds, they were preparing for first contact with the most dangerous species in galactic history. None of them realized they were about to recommend surrender terms for an encounter with people who considered horror movies a fun way to spend an evening. 2 weeks had passed since the discovery of the human probe, and Research Station Omicron 7 now resembled a fortress under siege. Emergency protocols had been activated, additional security measures were in place, and the research team worked around the clock with the dedication of scientists trying to prevent a galactic catastrophe. Taman had not left the laboratory for 3 days. His compound eyes showed signs of strain as he studied the latest batch of human cultural files. The discoveries kept getting more disturbing, and each new piece of evidence painted humanity as an even greater threat to galactic civilization. Team. Meeting! Taman called out, his voice carrying the weight of exhaustion and growing concern. We need to discuss our latest findings. The other three researchers gathered around the central holographic display, their postures indicating both fascination and fear. The past week had shattered everything they thought they knew about biological limitations and species development. Jiho, please share your analysis of the human military documentation, Taman requested. Jiho activated his display, showing scenes from various action films. Explosions filled the screen as human soldiers performed impossible feats of combat prowess. The evidence is clear, Jiho began, his antennae twitching nervously. These humans possess individual soldiers with capabilities that exceed our understanding of physics. Watch this documentation of a single human warrior infiltrating an enemy fortress. The screen showed scenes from a die-hard movie, with the aliens completely convinced they were watching military training footage. John McClane's impossible survival through explosions, falls, and gunfire seemed like proof of superhuman durability. Notice how this individual soldier defeats dozens of enemy combatants while sustaining injuries that would kill any known species, Jiho continued. Yet he maintains combat effectiveness throughout the entire engagement. Nari pulled up her own analysis on a secondary screen. I have been studying their historical records, which they appear to call science fiction. The implications are terrifying. Show us, Taman commanded. According to these historical documents, humans have already begun expanding across space, Nari explained as scenes from Star Wars and other space operas played on screen. They have engaged in warfare with multiple alien civilizations and consistently emerged victorious. The researchers watched in horror as humans battled various alien species across the galaxy, interpreting science fiction films as actual historical records. Look at their expansion patterns, Nari continued, pointing to scenes of human spaceships. They do not colonize empty worlds. They actively seek out planets already inhabited by alien species and claim them through superior military force. Dongwu stepped forward, his military training evident in his analysis. Their space warfare tactics are unlike anything in our databases. They combine impossible individual heroics with large-scale strategic thinking. Single human pilots routinely destroy entire enemy fleets. The screen showed Luke Skywalker destroying the Death Star, Han Solo outmaneuvering Imperial ships, and various other space battle scenes that the aliens interpreted as documentary evidence of human military superiority. But here is the most disturbing part, Dongwu continued. Even in their historical records of galactic conquest, humans maintain their recreational approach to violence. They celebrate victories, make jokes during combat, and treat warfare as an adventure. Taman absorbed this information while studying readouts from their ongoing analysis. What about their technological capabilities? Have you made progress, understanding their advanced systems? Yes, sir, Jiho replied, switching to a new set of files. I have analyzed what appear to be technical documentation films. The humans possess technology that defies our understanding of scientific principles. The screen displayed scenes from various superhero movies, which the aliens interpreted as documentaries about human technological enhancement programs. Individual humans can be enhanced to possess flight capabilities, energy manipulation powers, and reality-altering abilities, Jiho explained as Superman flew across the screen. They have mastered genetic engineering to a degree that allows them to create beings with godlike powers. Impossible, Dongwu muttered, but his voice carried uncertainty. The evidence is undeniable, Jiho insisted. Watch this documentation of their enhancement procedures. The screen showed origin stories from various superhero films, with the aliens interpreting them as scientific procedure records. Spider-Man's Radioactive spider bite, the Flash's lightning accident, and other superhero origins seemed like proof of human bioengineering mastery. They can grant individuals the ability to manipulate time, phase through solid matter, and control fundamental forces of nature, Jiho continued. Yet these enhanced humans still choose to engage in physical combat rather than simply eliminating threats from a distance. Because they enjoy the challenge, Nari observed. Even with godlike powers, humans prefer direct confrontation. This confirms their warrior nature. Taman moved to examine another display showing what the humans called fantasy films. And then we have their historical documentation of pre-technological warfare. Medieval fantasy movies played across the screen, showing humans battling dragons, wizards, and mythological creatures with primitive weapons. Before developing their advanced technology, humans mastered supernatural combat techniques, Taman explained. They learned to fight gods, demons, and creatures of pure magic using nothing but metal weapons and tactical thinking. Sir, Nari interrupted, I have discovered something even more disturbing about human culture. What is it? They appear to have multiple versions of the same historical events, each told from different perspectives. This suggests they possess not just time travel technology, but the ability to access parallel realities. The screen showed different adaptations of the same stories, various vampire movies, multiple zombie apocalypse films, and different versions of alien invasion scenarios. They can observe the same conflict across multiple timelines and realities, Nari continued. This explains their perfect tactical adaptation. They have literally seen every possible outcome of any given scenario. The research team fell silent as they contemplated the implications. They were dealing with a species that possessed time travel, reality manipulation, superhuman enhancement capabilities, and an apparent addiction to warfare across multiple dimensions. There is one more thing, Dongwu said quietly. I have been analyzing their cultural celebration practices. What do you mean? Taman asked. They have specific times of year when they celebrate their mastery of supernatural threats. They call it Halloween. Humans dress as the monsters they have defeated and distribute food to their young while recreating famous battles against cosmic horrors. The screen showed Halloween celebrations, with the aliens interpreting costume parties as victory celebrations and trick-or-treating as combat training for children. They turn their greatest enemies into symbols of celebration, Dongwu explained. This level of psychological dominance over supernatural threats is beyond our comprehension. Jiho pulled up additional data on his screen. Sir, I have also discovered that humans have developed multiple methods of resurrection. They can return their dead to life, though the subjects often display aggressive behavior afterward. The zombie plagues, Taman realized. The humans are not just surviving these events, they are causing them. Resurrection technology with imperfect results. Which explains why they are so prepared for undead encounters, Nari added. They created the threat themselves. The four researchers stood in the dim laboratory, surrounded by screens showing evidence of humanity's incredible capabilities. Everything they had discovered pointed to the same conclusion. Humans were not just survivors, they were the dominant predator species of their region of space. We need to prepare our report for the Galactic Council, Taman announced. The evidence is overwhelming. Humanity represents either the greatest potential ally or the most dangerous threat our civilization has ever encountered. What do we recommend? Dongwu asked. Taman considered the question carefully. The humans possessed technology that seemed like magic, individual capabilities that defied physics, and a cultural mindset that treated cosmic warfare as entertainment. We recommend extreme caution, he decided. First contact protocols must be adjusted to account for a species that considers interdimensional horror to be recreational activity. Sir, Jiho said hesitantly, what if they see our approach as a threat? The question hung in the air as all four researchers considered the implications. Based on their analysis, Humans had never encountered a challenge they could not overcome. They had mastered death, time, reality itself, and multiple forms of supernatural warfare. Then may the cosmic forces have mercy on our souls, Taman replied grimly, because based on everything we have learned, humans certainly will not. Outside the research station, the human probe continued its silent drift through space, completely unaware that its cargo of entertainment files had convinced an entire alien research team that Earth was populated by interdimensional warrior, gods who considered galaxy-spanning warfare to be a fun weekend activity. The Galactic Council chamber had never seen such tension. Representatives from dozens of species sat in their designated sections, their various forms of communication creating a low buzz of anxiety throughout the massive crystalline structure. At the center of it all, a holographic projection of Taman stood before the assembled delegates, his forearms trembling slightly as he prepared to deliver the most important presentation in galactic history. Honored members of the Council, Taman began, his voice amplified across the chamber, I present to you our complete analysis of the species known as humans from the planet designated Earth. The main display activated, showing a compilation of images from human horror and action films. To the alien researchers, these represented documentary evidence of humanity's incredible capabilities. After extensive study of their cultural archives, Taman continued, we have reached an unavoidable conclusion. We are dealing with the apex predator species of this galactic region. A murmur of concern rippled through the council chamber. The crystalline collective representative, a being of living mineral, resonated with frequencies of alarm. The machine consciousness delegate's optical sensors focused intently on the display. Please explain your findings, requested the council. Speaker, an ancient being whose species had guided galactic diplomacy for millennia. Taman activated his first set of evidence files. Humans inhabit what can only be classified as a Class 2 death world, the highest threat level in our databases. They face regular extinction events including biological plagues, supernatural invasions, and attacks by megafauna predators. The display showed scenes from zombie movies, ghost stories, and monster films. The assembled delegates watched in growing horror as humans battled impossible odds with primitive weapons and tactical thinking. Yet rather than flee these threats or evacuate their planet, Taman continued, humans have adapted to treat survival against cosmic horror as a form of entertainment. They deliberately expose themselves to these scenarios for recreational purposes. A delegate from the Peaceful Harmony Coalition stood, its translucent form shimmering with distress. Are you suggesting these beings seek out dangerous situations voluntarily? More than that, Taman replied grimly. They have developed an entire cultural industry around recreating survival scenarios. They gather in groups to experience simulated versions of their most terrifying encounters. The display shifted to show movie theaters and horror film festivals, which the aliens interpreted as training facilities for survival preparation. Furthermore, Taman continued, humans begin this survival conditioning in early childhood. Their young are systematically exposed to progressively more challenging scenarios as they develop, ensuring that every adult human is prepared for encounters that would drive most species to extinction. The council speaker's expression grew increasingly concerned. What evidence do you have of their individual capabilities? Extensive documentation shows that individual humans possess near supernatural durability, Taman explained as the screen showed action movie heroes surviving explosions and impossible falls. They demonstrate healing abilities that border on resurrection, reflexes that exceed our measurement capabilities, and tactical thinking that allows them to defeat opponents with vastly superior technology. The machine consciousness delegate processed this information rapidly. Such capabilities suggest advanced enhancement technology. Confirmed, Taman replied, switching to superhero movie footage. Humans have mastered biological and technological enhancement to a degree that allows individuals to manipulate fundamental forces of reality. Yet they still choose direct physical confrontation over simply eliminating threats from a distance. Why would they limit themselves in such a way? Asked a delegate from the Logic Supremacy Union. Because they enjoy the challenge, Taman answered. Humans appear to find pleasure in overcoming impossible odds through personal skill, rather than overwhelming force. The chamber fell silent as delegates absorbed this information. The implications were staggering. They were dealing with a species that possessed godlike capabilities, but chose to fight fair because it was more entertaining. Jiho's image appeared beside Taman's projection as he began presenting his section of the report. Our analysis reveals that humans have already begun expanding beyond their home system. Their historical records show successful military campaigns against multiple alien civilizations. Science fiction battle scenes played across the display, showing human fleets defeating various alien enemies. The delegates watched in fascination and growing fear as single human pilots destroyed entire enemy formations. They do not colonize empty worlds, Jiho continued. They actively seek out inhabited planets and claim them through superior tactics and individual heroics. Their expansion pattern suggests they view galactic conquest as an adventure rather than a necessity. A representative from the Cautious Observers Consortium raised a tentacle nervously. What are their diplomatic intentions? Have they shown any willingness to negotiate? Nari's projection joined the presentation to answer this question. Human diplomatic practices are unlike anything in our databases. They appear to prefer direct confrontation even in negotiations. However, they do show capacity for cooperation, but only with species that prove themselves through combat. Combat? The council speaker asked with obvious alarm. Humans respect strength above all else, Nari explained. Their cultural archives show that they form alliances only after testing potential partners through conflict. Peaceful overtures may be interpreted as weakness. The chamber erupted in worried communication as species representatives consulted with each other about the implications of this information. Dongwu's projection appeared to deliver the military assessment. From a defensive standpoint, humanity represents an unprecedented threat. They possess individual soldiers capable of single-handedly defeating entire enemy forces. Their space combat tactics combine impossible heroics with strategic brilliance. What are their current technological capabilities? Asked a delegate from the Defense Coordination Alliance. Beyond our current understanding, Dongwu replied. They have mastered time manipulation, reality alteration, and dimensional travel. They can access parallel universes to study optimal combat strategies. Some individuals possess the ability to manipulate matter at the molecular level. The display showed time travel movies and dimensional portal scenes from various science fiction films, which the aliens interpreted as documentary evidence of human scientific achievement. However, Dongwu continued, there is one factor that may work in our favor. Humans appear to have a code of honor that prevents them from using their full capabilities against significantly weaker opponents. Explain, demanded the council speaker. In their historical records, humans consistently limit themselves when facing inferior enemies. They appear to find no satisfaction in overwhelming victory. This suggests they might be open to fair negotiations if we approach them with appropriate respect. Taman resumed control of the presentation for his final recommendations. Based on our comprehensive analysis, I propose the following course of action. The display showed a detailed first contact protocol specifically designed for dealing with an apex predator civilization. First, we send our most advanced diplomatic vessel equipped with the strongest possible defenses. Second, we include tribute offerings to demonstrate our peaceful intentions and respect for their superior capabilities. Third, we prepare contingency surrender terms in case negotiations fail. Surrender terms? Multiple delegates asked simultaneously. Given human expansion patterns and combat capabilities, Resistance would be futile if they choose conquest over diplomacy, Taman explained. However, their cultural values suggest they might accept tributary relationships with species that acknowledge their dominance. The council speaker deliberated for several moments before addressing the chamber. This is the most significant threat assessment in galactic history. All regional governors will be notified immediately. Border defenses will be reinforced, and evacuation protocols will be prepared for systems near human space. Sir, Taman interjected, I recommend against aggressive preparations. Humans appear to interpret military buildup as a challenge. We should approach them with maximum diplomatic respect and minimal visible defenses. The chamber fell silent as the full implications of the situation became clear. They were preparing for first contact with a species so dangerous that even appearing threatening might trigger a galactic war they could not win. Very well, the council speaker decided. Prepare the most advanced diplomatic mission in our history. Select only our finest ambassadors. Include valuable tribute gifts and draft multiple contingency agreements ranging from trade partnerships to complete submission. As the session ended and delegates began emergency communications with their home systems, none of them realized they were preparing surrender terms for first contact with a species whose greatest threat to galactic peace was their tendency to laugh at scary movies. The irony was lost on everyone in the chamber as they began the largest military and diplomatic mobilization in galactic history. All because 4 well-meaning researchers had discovered human entertainment files and mistaken them for training documentaries. Somewhere in space, the human probe drifted onward, its simple message of peace and friendship completely overshadowed by the cultural cargo that had convinced an entire galactic civilization they were about to meet interdimensional warrior gods. The most advanced diplomatic vessel in galactic history approached Earth's solar system with all the caution of prey animals entering a predator's territory. The ship, designated as the Peace Through Strength, carried representatives from 12 major galactic civilizations, each equipped with their finest tribute offerings and most respectful surrender documents. Captain Baekhyun of the Vorthak Diplomatic Corps stood on the bridge, his 4 arms clasped behind his back as he watched the blue and green planet grow larger on the main screen. Behind him, Ambassador Hyunwoo from the Crystalline Collective resonated nervous frequencies while checking his translation equipment for the 100th time. Sir, called Navigator Seok-jin from his station, we are receiving primitive radio transmissions from the planet's surface. Should we attempt communication? Not yet, Captain Baekhyun replied cautiously. According to the research data, humans interpret unsolicited contact as aggressive behavior. We must wait for them to acknowledge our presence first. On Earth, in a small movie theater in downtown Seoul, Minho was having the worst work shift of his life. The projection system had broken down twice, the popcorn machine was making strange noises, and now the radio in the office was picking up some kind of weird signal that sounded almost like voices. Hello? Minho spoke into the radio. Microphone, not really expecting an answer. Is someone there? The response nearly knocked him off his chair. Greetings, mighty warrior of the death world, boomed a voice through the speakers with such reverence that Minho dropped his soda. We come seeking peaceful coexistence with your terrifying empire. Minho stared at the radio in confusion. What? Aboard the Peace Through Strength, the crew exchanged nervous glances. The human had responded, but his tone seemed casual, almost dismissive. Captain Baekhyun consulted his briefing notes frantically. The human appears to be testing our resolve, Ambassador Hyunwoo observed, his crystalline form flickering with anxiety. Notice how he responds with minimal effort, as if our presence is beneath his notice. Adjust our approach, Captain Baekhyun commanded. Demonstrate greater respect. The transmission resumed with even more formality. Honored Master of Cosmic Survival Techniques, we humble servants of the Galactic Council offer tribute and seek audience with your leadership. Minho rubbed his temples. wondering if someone was playing a prank on him. The voice sounded serious, but the words made no sense. "Look, I think you have the wrong number. I just work at a movie theater." The silence that followed was deafening. On the alien ship, every crew member froze at the implications of what they had just heard. "Movie theater," Captain Baekhyun whispered in horror. "He works at a facility dedicated to training in survival scenarios." A combat instructor, Ambassador Hyunwoo, realized, his form brightening with terror. "We are speaking to a professional trainer of warriors." Back on Earth, Minho was getting increasingly confused by the strange conversation. He decided to call his friend Soo-jin, who ran a horror movie blog, and might know something about this weird prank call. "Soo-jin, you need to get down here," Minho said into his phone. "Someone is playing the weirdest joke on me through the radio system." 20 minutes later, Soo-jin burst through the theater doors, her laptop bag slung over her shoulder and her eyes bright with curiosity. She had been writing her horror blog for 3 years and prided herself on knowing every scary movie ever made. "What kind of joke?" she asked as Minho led her to the office. "Someone keeps calling me a warrior and talking about death worlds and tribute offerings," Minho explained. "They claim to be from some galactic council or something." Soo-jin's eyes widened with excitement. "That sounds like science fiction. Maybe it's viral marketing for a new movie?" The radio crackled to life again. "Honored trainer of survival warriors. We have prepared tribute offerings including rare minerals, advanced technology, and formal submission documents. When may we present these gifts to your supreme leadership?" Soo-jin grabbed the microphone before Minho could stop her. "Hi there! This is so cool! Are you guys making a new alien invasion movie?" The response was immediate panic from the alien ship. "2 of them!" Captain Baekhyun gasped. "The human has summoned reinforcements." "Sir," Navigator Seok-jin reported. With trembling antennae, the second human's vocal patterns suggest extreme confidence. She may be a senior instructor. Soo-jin, meanwhile, was having the time of her life. "So what's your movie about? Aliens who think Earth is dangerous? That's hilarious. Most alien invasion movies portray them as superior to humans." "Movie?" came the confused response. "We do not understand this term." "You know, films, cinema, horror movies, science fiction, that kind of thing," Soo-jin explained enthusiastically. "I run a blog about horror films. I watch them all the time." The alien ship went completely silent. After several minutes, Captain Baekhyun's voice returned, but much quieter and more uncertain. "You watch survival training scenarios for entertainment?" "Of course." Soo-jin laughed. "Horror movies are the best. Nothing beats a good zombie apocalypse film or a classic slasher movie. I must have seen hundreds of them." The truth hit the alien crew like a physical blow. Ambassador Hyunwoo's crystalline form dimmed to almost nothing as the realization sank in. "They are not training documentaries," he whispered. "They are fictional entertainment." "But that means—" Captain Baekhyun could barely form the words. "Humans create imaginary survival scenarios for fun." "Hundreds of survival scenarios?" the captain asked weakly into the communicator. "Oh, way more than that," Soo-jin replied cheerfully. "There are thousands of horror movies. Every year they make new ones with even crazier monsters and more creative ways to survive impossible situations. It's amazing what human imagination can come up with." Navigator Seok-jin looked up from his station with dawning horror. "Sir, if these are works of imagination, then humans possess the psychological capability to envision cosmic horrors that do not exist in reality. They create interdimensional nightmares in their minds for entertainment," Ambassador Hyunwoo added, his voice filled with a different kind of terror. "What kind of species finds pleasure in imagining ways the universe could kill them?" By now, government agencies on Earth had detected the unusual radio transmissions, and translator Kyung-hee from the Korean Ministry of Foreign Affairs had arrived at the theater with confused military officer Woo Jin in tow. "Who exactly are we talking to?" Kyung-hee asked as she set up her official translation equipment. The alien response came through clearly. "We are representatives of the Galactic Council, seeking first contact with the human species. We have spent weeks studying your cultural archives to prepare for this meeting." Woo Jin and Kyung-hee exchanged glances. This was either the most elaborate hoax in history or actual first contact with an alien civilization. "Which cultural archives?" Kyung-hee asked carefully. "Your survival training documentation, horror films, action sequences, science fiction historical records," came the reply. "We have analyzed thousands of hours of material showing human capabilities in combat and survival scenarios." The humans in the theater looked at each other in growing understanding. Soo-jin was the first to start giggling, then Minho joined in, and soon all four humans were laughing helplessly. "You thought horror movies were real?" Soo-jin managed between fits of laughter. "You analyzed Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees as documentary subjects?" Yes," came the mortified alien response. "Oh my God," Minho gasped, wiping tears from his eyes. "You probably thought humans could come back from the dead and fight demons." "This explains so much," Woo Jin said, trying to maintain his military composure but failing. "You kept asking about our zombie defense protocols in your diplomatic messages. We had no idea what you meant." The radio crackled with what sounded suspiciously like alien sobbing. "We prepared surrender documents," Captain Baekhyun admitted. "We mobilized half the galactic fleet because we thought you were interdimensional warrior gods." "Well, that's embarrassing for everyone involved," Kyung-hee said diplomatically, though she was still smiling. "Should we arrange proper first contact protocols? You know, the kind based on actual reality rather than fictional entertainment?" There was a long pause before the alien response came through. "That would be appreciated, though we must ask, if these scenarios are fictional, why do humans create such terrifying entertainment?" Soo-jin grabbed the microphone eagerly. "Because it's fun. There's something exciting about being scared in a safe environment. Plus, horror movies let us explore our fears and anxieties without real danger. It's like a roller coaster for your emotions." "You voluntarily frighten yourselves for pleasure?" came the bewildered reply. "Absolutely," Minho chimed in. "Some of my best dates have been to horror movies. Nothing brings people together like screaming at jump scares and laughing about it afterward." "Your species bonds through shared terror experiences," the alien voice said slowly, as if trying to process this concept. "This is actually quite ingenious from a social perspective." Woo Jin stepped forward, his military training finally finding some solid ground. "Perhaps we should establish formal diplomatic contact. Are you actually in orbit around Earth?" "Yes, though we are prepared to retreat immediately if you find our presence."